Hello, my name is Katya Yoon, and I'm a professor of biology at Eugene Lang College of Liberal Arts at the New School in New York City. We are situated on the unceded lands of the Lenape people, and I acknowledge this as a commitment to beginning the process of working to dismantle the ongoing legacies of settler colonialism. Today I'll be speaking very briefly about the derivation of the HeLa cell line and its ability as a case study to be responsive to the Black Lives Matter movement, specifically within a life science education context. Earlier this summer, the scientific community, in response to the murder of George Floyd, had to reckon with racist activities within their own ranks. This piece was authored by women whose identities were cloaked under the umbrella of 500 women scientists in an effort to protect any negative repercussions to the careers of these young women for authoring an anti-racism piece. This particular action was followed by a number of others, most significantly the national strike to shut down STEM, which occurred on June 10th and expanded to be a shutdown academia movement. When I heard about the strike, I reached out to my own colleagues and friends in the community to ask them how they would be responding to this call to action. There was a variety of responses ranging from flummoxed to frustrated to just jumping right on board. Most wanted to do the right thing, but they were looking for leadership within their own professional societies as to what to do next. I was pleased to see that the AAAS immediately put out a statement in response to the Black Lives Matter movement and followed that response up with concrete actions in the form of a strategic plan. They did this despite being told by members of their community that they should just stick to the science. And to the efforts of the CEO, I have to commend him for basically saying that if we don't do anything and we don't continue with the strategic plan, we would by default be performing a racist act. And this was the email that was sent to its members just last week. I was pleased to see that my own professional society, the American Society for Cell Biology, also came up with a 2-year strategic plan, which commences this September, specifically looking at the complicated contributions of Henrietta Lacks. So why so much focus on Henrietta Lacks and the derivation of the HeLa cell line? Well, as a cell biologist, I recognize the important contribution that these cells have made towards the entire field of biomedical research and for many model systems in the life sciences. Therefore, in my own curriculum, I have placed this case study front and center. In order to develop the case study and have its complexity come forward in a meaningful way for our students, I have collaborated with colleagues in the social sciences and humanities to ensure that I am not misstepping or misrepresenting this narrative in any way. And one of the people I turn to often is Octavia Butler. She herself holds many identities. So again, if we're going to talk about intersectionality, it's this notion that who you are and how you navigate the world is a consequence of multiple identities coming together that could result in a different kind of oppression. She experienced a lot of backlash during her lifetime, but as a science fiction writer, as an African American woman, and a feminist writer, she has championed a different future through her Afrofuturism and dystopian novels. She says here to all of us that each of us could be doing something to activate in this moment. And so I've chosen to do that through curriculum development and through faculty development, helping them adopt these curricula. Part of my work involved working with people outside of my field, as I said, like Octavia Butler, in critical race theory. And that's Dorothy Roberts. I've had the privilege of working with Dorothy over the last 10 years in the capacity of an interdisciplinary group of scholars called Symbiosis. Here you see Dorothy's tweet in Black in the Ivory, which was a social media forum for individuals in academia to express some of the racist activities that have been placed upon them. So in this particular tweet, Dorothy's commenting about a lecture that she gave where she describes the racist exploitation of Henrietta Lacks and the response by a white man claiming to be a retired doctor from Johns Hopkins when he says, well, I think that the patients in the colored ward got better care because we tested experimental treatments on them. Now, we could say that this particular person meant no harm, and perhaps that's true. Maybe the intent was not to harm, but the impact did harm. Not only is this academic heckling, but this has a larger harm to the community at large, as can be seen in the following tweets by Harriet Washington, who is a scholar and author of Medical Apartheid, and other scholars and academics who write, "Henrietta Lacks haunts me. For a person to hear anything related to how Black people were treated medically at that time and not be sick says a lot about them." So how do we begin to grapple with the dominant narrative that has been shared with many of us who are older in our generation in the scientific community, and begin to tell the more complex story of the derivation of the cell line? Here we see an open letter authored by Rebecca Kumar, a young woman of color who is also a faculty member in the first year curriculum, who's been asked to use The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks, authored by Rebecca Skloot, as part of her freshman writing class. This is the common book that was assigned in 2016 alongside many universities and colleges that did so. And in her open letter, she's cautioning us to use the book, but perhaps not use it as a single narrative. Instead, to unearth the complexities of this story by providing some perspectives from the African American community. In the early adoptions of the HeLa cells case study by faculty in the life sciences, some felt that this letter was not appropriate to assign to students alongside chapters that they had chosen from the book. They felt that the tone of the letter was antagonistic or aggressive, and some felt that introducing race into the classroom didn't seem quite right in a science curriculum. So that gave me some pause, and I went back to the social science scholars that I collaborate with, and I thought about ways that I could write teaching notes that would meet the science faculty where they are and help them understand the value of incorporating this open letter in their curriculum. And I'm pleased to say that once I found the ways of communicating to them, it has been adopted by some and seen as a valuable resource in this curriculum. So next week in the workshop, I'll be talking about yet more dominant narratives that are apparent in our textbooks in the life sciences. Myself and Cheryl Broverman will be talking about how we use a decolonialist approach to life science education, how we utilize work from artists to provoke our own communities to be more critical about the ways in which they might be reifying race or the biological constructions of race, and to think about how social scientists are basically asking us not to simply not address race in our classroom, but to actually be more actively engaged in anti-racist education. So I'll be drawing on some of the curriculum and artwork that my own students have produced in my courses. And lastly, I'll be drawing on the open access curriculum called Stem Cells Across the Curriculum. So I encourage you to look at this curriculum in advance of the workshop, and I'll be specifically looking at some of the teaching notes as important resources to help ground faculty who might not have a background in critical race theory to engage with these kinds of anti-racist pedagogies in their own classrooms. Thank you.